think we're good here. All right. So again, thank you everyone for being here, and welcome to the Profit Leak Audit. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through 5 places that specialty practices quietly lose money every year and how the best run practices close each one. Some quick housekeeping. This session is being recorded, so if you need to leave or if you missed part of it, no worries. We'll send around the recording. And if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat, and I will get to them either at the end or as they come up, depending on where we are. I'm Isaac. I run marketing at DSN. And yeah, again, thanks for joining. Let's hop in. So let me start with a number. The average specialty practice, loses somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 a year, and that is per location. And here's the part that gets us every time. Almost none of them can tell you exactly where it went. Think about why that is. If you had one $200,000 hole in your practice, you would have easily found it. It's easy to see. The problem is it's never just one hole. It's 5 or potentially more smaller ones, 40 grand here, 90 grand there, 20 grand there. And each one hides inside a number that you don't track. None of these show up on a report called money we lost. There's no line item for it. So nobody goes looking, and it just repeats every year while you work just as hard as the practice down the road. And they're quietly keeping more than you are. So that's what we're fixing today. 5 leaks, and for each one, I'll name it, do the math, and show you how to spot it in your own numbers. So let's get started. So here's the map for the next 20 minutes. 5 leaks, and we'll take these in order. 1 is denied and abandoned claims. 2, documentation eating your chair time. And this is one number that stops most people cold. 3, what I call the tethered practice. 4, the dropped consult, and 5, the dormant patient and referral list. So let's hop in, starting with claims. So again, leak number 1 is denied claims that nobody reworked. And here's how it plays out. You submit your claims for the month. Some percentage come back denied on the first pass, and that's normal. And that happens for the most part to everyone. The problem isn't the denial. The problem is what happens next, which is usually nothing. A chunk of those denials never get reworked. They age out past the appeal window and quietly get written off. No one decided to lose that money. It just sort of slipped through. And on surgical claims, where the dollar amounts are big, even a modest denial rate that doesn't get reworked is tens of thousands of dollars a year. And before you count the balance, before you even count the balances that age past collectability. Here's how you spot it. Look at your denial rate, then your rework rate, what percentage of denials actually get resubmitted, your days to resubmit, and the killer number of what percentage of your denials never get touched at all. If you don't know what that last number is, that's the leak. And let me show you the fix. So here's how you close leak 1. 3 moves. First, cleaner claims going out the door. Scrub for the common errors before the claim is ever submitted, so fewer of them bounce back in the first place. You're shrinking the denial pile at the source. Second, automated denial tracking. Instead of hoping someone notices a denial, the system flags every one and puts it in front of a human. Nothing gets to die quietly in an inbox. Third, and this is the one that probably recovers the most money, a rework queue with owners. Each denial routes to a specific person with a deadline attached, so it gets worked before it ages past the appeal window. And that's the difference between a denial you recover and a denial you just fully write off. If you do these 3 things, the most predictable leak on the list basically closes. So now leak 2. And this is the one I want you to sit with because most practices have never done this math. Simply put, documentation is eating your chair time. Every field the surgeon or assistant has to fill in, every note batched at the end of the day, that is chair time that isn't turning. So let's go through this together. Say documentation drags each case by 10 minutes between the charting, the field notes, and the clicking around. 10 minutes a case. Now you say you run 8 cases in a typical surgery day. 10 times 8 is 80 minutes. And that is 80 minutes of shared capacity gone every single day. And here's what that means. Roughly one implant case a day, you simply didn't have room for. Not lost to no-shows, not to marketing, lost to the keyboard. And if you multiply one case a day by your average case value, by your operating days, that number is, for most practices, pretty big. And it's invisible because it never shows up as a loss. It just shows up as we're busy and we ran behind again. You can spot this in the end of day charting backlog and how far behind you're running by mid-afternoon. Now here's the fix and where we think it gets good. So how do you close this leak? You get the surgeon off the keyboard. Look at the before. Notes typed out, field by field, batch at the end of the day, and by lunch, the surgeon's already behind and the schedule is slipping. That's the leak in action. Now the after. AI-assisted documentation drafts the note as you work. The surgeon reviews it, signs off, and moves straight to the next chair. The documentation stops being a bottleneck between cases and becomes something that happens in the background. And here's the payoff, bottom of the slide. You get more cases through with the same team on the same schedule. That's just 80 minutes we just talked about back in your day. And this is one of the two leaks today where the fix is really about the platform you're running on, and I'll tie that together at the end. Also, just in addition to AI, there are automations and pre-built notes that are super helpful in making these note-taking faster. Now is leak 3, and I call this the tethered practice, and once you see it, you really can't unsee it. And this is the work that only happens when someone is physically standing next to the server in your office, and it shows up in 3 phases. The doctor wants to review tomorrow's cases from home the night before. She can't get in, so the morning huddle runs long and the first case starts late. The biller would happily knock out denials over a long weekend, but he can't touch the system from home, so your AR just sits there aging every holiday. And the owner, you've got multiple locations and you can't see what's happening at location B without getting in the car. Every one of those is productive hours that simply don't happen. Not because your people don't want to work, but because the software is chained to a box in the closet. Spot it by looking at how much your team's work is location locked and watch what your AR does over the next holiday. The fix is a big one, especially for anyone that's still on premise. And here's how you close the tethered practice. You cut it loose from the server with browser-based access, so the work happens when your team has time, not when they're standing in the building. Watch the same 3 people flip. The doctor now preps tomorrow's cases from the couch, so the huddle starts on time, and the first case is on schedule. The biller works denials from anywhere, so your AR keeps moving right through the holiday weekend itself, instead of aging. And the owner sees every location schedule from one screen, from anywhere, no car required. And this payoff is relatively simple. Hours of real productive work that used to be flat out impossible now just happen. For those of you still on-prem, this is the single biggest capacity unlock on the whole list, and it costs you nothing extra in staff. Now on to leak 4. Leak 4, and this one has typically the most emotional sting for the owner, the dropped consult, excuse me. A patient who needs a high margin case, implants, a graft, whatever it is, comes in. They sit in your chair, you do the consult, and they walk back out with a let me think about it, and you never hear from them again. That case didn't cost you $1 to generate. They were already in the building and it just evaporated. Here's what usually happens. The consult ends soft. No financing gets offered in the room, so the patient goes home to worry about the money alone. There's no real follow-up and the plan quietly goes cold. And this math is pretty brutal. If just one high margin case a week walks out unbooked, that's a 6-figure hole by the end of the year. 1 a week. Spot it in your consult to treatment conversion rate and your same day acceptance rate. Now here's the fix. In short, you try to close the case in the room before the patient leaves the chair. And you do this in 3 moves. First, a same-day acceptance workflow. Present the plan, price it, and book it right there while the patient's in front of you and he or she is motivated. Don't send them home to decide. Second, financing offered at the consult. This is the big one. Most patients don't say no to the treatment, they say no to the number. Put a monthly payment option in front of them in the same room, and cost stops being the silent reason why they walk. They decide on a number they can actually handle, and they do it on the spot. Third, automated follow-up on cold plans. For the ones who don't book that day, Every unaccepted plan gets chased automatically instead of forgotten, and no plan goes quiet. Do these three things, and that six-figure hole starts closing by the week. Now, leak 5, and this is the cheapest one to fix: the dormant patient and referral list. So these are folks you already have a relationship with, the ones who've gone quiet and nobody's reaching out to. 3 groups: past patients with no recall setup. You already paid to acquire these people once, and they're just sitting in your database. Referring doctors nobody's called in a while. The relationship that was sending new cases last year is pulled because it wasn't maintained. And lapsed maintenance or follow-up patients who fell off the schedule and were never chased down. This is your cheapest revenue in your, this is the cheapest revenue, in your entire practice. You're not paying to acquire anyone. You're just picking the phone back up. Spot it with one question: how many of your patients and referrers have had 0 contact in over 12 months? And if you don't have that number, that's the leak. Here's how to close leak 5. You make the list work itself so it doesn't depend on anyone remembering. First, automated recall. Patients due for a follow-up get contacted automatically on schedule every time without someone having to run a report and make a list. Second, referral relationship tracking. You can actually see which referring docs have gone quiet, and the system prompts you to reconnect before that relationship cools off all the way. You're maintaining the referral pipeline instead of reacting when it dries up. Third, reactivation campaigns. Your dormant patients get a nudge to come back and rebook. This is revenue you already earn once, just walking back through the door. And none of this requires new patients or new spend. It's a system doing the outreach your team is too busy to do by hand. Now, this is all 5 leaks. I know I went through it relatively quickly and all 5 fixes. And let me show you what happens when you add them up, because that's the part that changes how you think about this. So here's the whole point of today on one slide. Look at the stack: denied claims, chair time lost to documentation, the tethered practice, dropped consults, the dormant list. Individually, any of these is easy to shrug off. 40 grand here, 20 grand there, not enough to sound an alarm. And that's exactly why these leaks survived. But most practices don't have just one of these. They have all 5 running at the same time every year. And when you stack them, you're back at that number from the very start: $100,000 to $250,000 a year per location. Now, here's the part we want to land. Every dollar in that stack is money you already earned. You already did the surgery, or you have the patient, or you have the referring relationship. Getting it back requires 0 new patients, no new location, no bigger marketing budget. It's just plugging what's already open. And that's a faster, cheaper, more controllable project than grow the practice. So the question isn't whether to fix these, it's which one you choose first. And there's one thing that closes 2 of them at once. So you've seen the fix for all 5, but I want to connect 2 of them because they're really the same fix. Leak 2, chair time, and leak 3, the tethered practice, share one root cause. They both come down to the platform your practice runs on. If your system is chained to a server in a closet and it makes your team type more than they should, those 2 leaks are baked in. You can't fully process your way out of them because the process isn't the problem, the platform is. And that's exactly why we built DSN. To close, DSN is AI-assisted documentation practice management, so the surgeon stays in the chair while he finishes the note. Your work can happen from anywhere. And again, we just make it super easy to run your specialty practice from anywhere. We're obviously not going to turn this into a demo on this call, but if you want to see where your practice stands against these 5 leaks, we're happy to walk you through the actual numbers with you. So before we get into questions, here is your final checklist. 1, pull your denial rework rate. The fastest number to find is the percentage of denials that never get touched. 2, time your documentation. Note completion per case times cases per day gives you your chair time leak in minutes. 3, test your remote access. Can your team actually work from home? And watch what your AR does over the next holiday. 4, check your consult conversion, specifically same-day acceptance, and whether cold plans gets followed up on. And 5, count your dormant list, patients and referrers with 0 contact in the last 12 months. Run those 5 this week in your own numbers. Every one turns an invisible leak into a number you can see. And if you take one thing away, this money is already yours. You're not going out to earn it. You're just stopping it from leaking out. And with that, let's take some questions. Let me pull this up. Okay. Seeing some questions here. Let's start here. All right. Question one. How can we tell whether our denied claims are normal or a serious problem? All right. So some denials are always going to happen. So the goal isn't necessarily to get to zero. What matters is whether you know why they're happening. And you're able to figure out how much money is tied up in them and how quickly your team is following up. If the same denial reasons keep appearing over and over, or claims are just sitting untouched for weeks, that's typically a sign that you have a process problem and not just a normal insurance issue that pretty much every practice has. Another question, how can we collect aging patient balances without damaging the patient relationship? So for this, the best way is to address payment early and communicate clearly. Patients should understand what they're expected to pay before treatment, and they should have an easy way to pay that payment. When balances do age, the outreach should be consistent and respectful. Usually the relationship gets damaged when a practice waits months and then suddenly becomes aggressive about collecting. So just be consistent and communicative. How often should a practice perform a profit leak audit, and who should own it? I would recommend doing an audit monthly to start. I know that sort of seems like a lot, but once you sort of get a hold on it, you can probably do it less. And the most important number should probably be reviewed weekly, like claim denials. That being said, the bigger issue is ownership here. Every leak should belong to someone. And if everybody is responsible, then usually no one is. Let's see if there are any more. Doesn't look like it. So we will call it here. Again, we will send this recording out. Thank you everyone for joining. I know how busy we are. And yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions at dsn.com. Again, we'll send the recording. You can reply there as well. And have a great rest of your evening.